welcome to the Attitude Lounge. Today we have a special guest, another sorority sister, Christina Vega-Perez.
Welcome to the show.
Christine,
Feel like I got
don't mind me, I get silly sometimes. Christine is like a leading healthcare industry life coach. She has an RN, an MSN. She's also the director of health safety and wellness for our sorority. So Kaihu, thank you for all that you do. Both, as a in the sorority, but also, one of the things that attracted me is that I've been talking to people, in particularly some sorority sisters, and I have to put something out. This has not been like planned in any way whatsoever. Like I just had one sister after another, and it's just been like I've reached out to some have reached out to me, and somewhere in the intermingle of everything, we've scheduled things. But what really like interests me that you're here for the healthcare providers who need life coaching. Uh, it's almost like you're here about healing the healers, right? Because that's how
exactly.
I look at nurses. That's how I look at other health providers, right? And similar to like when we talk about therapy and we talk about how therapists need therapists. This is a prime example of, someone who saw a vision and who saw a need, to go and help, the people who, before they get burned out, right? Before they get into the field.
Right. The burnout is so real. And I know firsthand as an RN myself. And so as my coaching business developed, yeah, I really found that what I was drawn to is, and also who was drawn to me kind of naturally, was my fellow RNs, my fellow healthcare
Mm.
industry professionals, because the burnout is real. It is a very demanding industry. And we don't provide the full support that's truly needed. And so I'm just hoping to be a piece. Obviously I can't go out there and prevent burnout altogether, but my goal is just to work with people and give them tips and strategies and just hear them out one-on-one and hopefully make an impact of some
Yes.
sort.
Yes. Yes. So your business is life's risk management, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So tell us like starting from, because I feel like you first have to start sharing like what attracted you to the healthcare field. Like what attracted you to being a nurse?
Okay, so you're taking it all the way back to
A
my
little bit,
high
a little
school
bit,
days.
just yeah.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was pretty good at like math and sciences, language arts, reading, writing. That wasn't my strong suit. So I gravitated more towards something math and science related. So I thought, okay, from that, what can I do? And I luckily had the thought to say, I want to get into a career that I know I can get a job for when I graduate. And I had an older cousin who was a nurse also while I was making this decision. So I chatted with her. I was kind of like, do you like it? She was like, oh, there's so many opportunities and different things you can do as an RN. And that's really what gave me the final push to say, okay, well, then I'm going to go for my nursing degree. So it was just that kind. I didn't really know for sure, right? How do you know as a teenager?
Right.
But I just made the choice, went with it. I'll be honest, in nursing school, my last year of nursing school, kind of regretted it. I was thinking, this isn't for me, but I put so much time and money already into it, so I'm gonna see it through.
Right.
And I don't regret it at this point, right? It was just kind of a feeling at that point, but it's hard to make those choices at such a young age. So of course there was some uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought up a good point. We as a nation, we kind of like ask a lot of a 17, 18-year-old, right? Like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? How are you going to support the family that you don't currently have? Right?
Mhm. True. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I personally feel like I've done well in the mathematical areas, but science has not been my forte. So I always appreciate careers that people choose to have, who that pertain in the healthcare system, because I look up to nurses actually a lot more than maybe doctors. So I think nurses have this extra care and compassionate training that it's lacking in other areas in the healthcare system. And
Mhm.
so I've, even in situations where I've gone into anaphylaxis and stuff like that, like the nurses, they, like what they do, how they save lives has been really inspirational for me to see. Not that I want to be a nurse, but inspirational for me to see, and also to promote, how beautiful of a career that can be. But yes, knowing that you're dealing with so many, right, sick people, and
Mhm.
sometimes the outcomes are not well too. They're not good outcomes, and you still go home. You still have to face your family, because
Yeah.
you're a daughter, you're a wifey, right? You're a mother of two. So it's
Yeah.
like life doesn't end after you clock out. You still have to go and face what the challenges that are at home. Who had a bad day in school today, who didn't, is
Mhm.
there a birthday to celebrate that evening, so I feel like it's people are just juggling a lot in life.
Mhm.
It's a lot to
Mhm.
juggle, and I think you're here because you're somebody that people can reach out to.
Yeah.
And how do you go from saying, okay, I was a nurse, I did X, Y, and Z, but now I'm pivoting, so because as a family, like I really do want to create a business, but also I want to help others. And how did you make that determination? I'm sure it's because you saw the need, but
Mhm.
take us through like a little bit of that journey that you had to go on.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the initial idea occurred during COVID. Like so many ideas happened, so many shifts happened during that time frame. I know we were chatting before we kind of jumped on the recording, but that's also when I made a move to from Pennsylvania to Florida. And during that transition, I also was changing jobs, obviously, and I had about a month off. And I can't tell you the last time I didn't work for a month. I started working at 13 years old. I didn't get that kind of
Mm,
time off much. And so when I had a month off, I was just doing a lot of thinking. I would go out for runs and walks and um, kind of created this idea that I wanted to use what I've learned so far to help others go after the things that they want. And that was kind of the beginning stage of my idea of my business. And I just started with a blog and helped people with, different difficult decision making events in their lives, things like that. But I quickly realized that a blog wasn't going to cut it because I wanted to have that interaction with people, not just here's the blog and hope it helps. So
right.
I shifted to actual coaching, life coaching, and kind of dug in and realized that it's a thing and that I can do this and started working with people one on one and holding workshops and holding group coaching sessions. And from that is when I kind of mentioned I noticed that I naturally was working with healthcare professionals because I'm a healthcare professional and that's just who I gravitated towards. And so that's when I really honed in to say, this is what I want to do. I want to go and speak at, start speaking at hospitals and again, holding the workshops, but specifically for healthcare professionals because it is a very demanding job. It's a very demanding area. And not all jobs you can go in, make a mistake, and it's someone's life on the line, right? So
Right.
that is a big burden to carry. That is a
Hmm.
lot of stress. And so we can't just pour into our healthcare professionals by ensuring they have, the tools. Yes, you need the tools to actually do your job, the skills, of course. But what about our wellness? What about our, resiliency? What about pouring back into our own cups so we can keep pouring into others? That's what I felt was, a gap. And so that's when I changed, kind of shifted my mission to really go after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great to realize. Unfortunately, not everybody realizes when they need help. Not everybody realizes when they need a shift in a career.
Mhm.
And I think that's where you end up, like probably in a career that maybe you love it, but maybe you didn't get the best from it because you didn't value yourself, enough to say, hey, here's Christine. She offers these services. I may need them. You know,
Yeah.
I think oftentimes we're hard on ourselves, right? We think we can keep going, like, and in our minds, we can. That happens to me, honestly, on a weekly basis. Like sometimes I think I can do stuff. Like for example, I was recently in Puerto Rico, but I was only there for a few days, and I loved the part of being there, but the part getting there and leaving was quite harsh to my body, to the point where, and this is the part that people don't talk about, right? To the point that I did need to be wheeled into an airplane and I needed to be wheeled out because
Yeah.
my body gave out from my waist down. And that happens. That's something I live with. And I only mention it because there's lots of people going through all sorts of different things that are happening in their lives. But they think that they can still go the same way they were going, 15 years ago or 10 years ago. And so I think there's this like big outburst of, trying to tell people like you need to take care of yourself. You need to, look at your life, and determine what's there that's serving you and what's not. And one of the things I liked about, because you also have a podcast and I love the title, but are you happy? And that's a question we need to be asking ourselves, similar to like kind of my slogan. I keep saying you got to do something that, makes you smile, that puts a smile on your face, that fills your cup, like we were talking, because we need to be regenerated for the following week and the week after that. And I'm sure, like, as a coach, you as well need to be poured into your cup, because how are you going to give to others?
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a matter of saying, wait, why am I doing this? I feel like sometimes you get into autopilot
Mm,
and you're saying yes and taking on all these responsibilities and going down this path, but you don't take the moment to think, is this really what I still want? Or why am I doing it this way? It just takes that moment to give yourself that pause to reevaluate your situation and figure out if you're taking the correct steps forward and allowing yourself to say, you know what? No, I'm not. And I'm going to pivot, or I'm going to ask for help, or I'm going to change my mind, or I'm going to make this difficult decision. And that's when like really beautiful shifts and changes can happen in your life. But you have to first get the time that to pause and evaluate it. And two, make that tough choice, make that difficult decision.
right.
But it's doable, it's possible, and then you get to live, yeah, towards more joy. And that is my podcast title. But are you happy? Because you're doing all these things, but are you happy? Are you happy? Because if you're not, then what are you doing them for? We only get one life.
There you go. There's something to be said, right, about that statement. You only live once, YOLO.
Mhm.
But it's
It's so
true. It's so true. And oftentimes we're just, like you said, we are on autopilot. We're just doing what
true.
we learned. And we forget that, well, no, we don't, just because we learned it that way doesn't necessarily mean that you have to continue that way, you know?
Yes.
And just because somebody gave you advice, that's something I also learned. Because I think it's important to go to people who are focused in your wellness, in your coaching, because we could ask all our friends a zillion things, right? But our friends don't necessarily, they're not walking in our shoes. They're not going through the same things. And so,
Mhm.
advice, we need to be careful where we get advice from,
It's
because
true.
like I could say, well, I don't have a biological sister, but let's just say I could say my biological sister said X, Y, and Z work with us, so that's what I'm doing in my life. Well, no, that
Mhm.
worked for her at a different time, you know, and these are different times that we live. Our grandparents, maybe they might have some success, right? But those were different times than they are now. And so whatever they did may not work for us now. We talked about
Mhm.
having jobs with like retirement, like retirement funds. A lot of jobs have gotten rid of that. There's still some that have it, and if they do, you're very lucky. But there's some that don't, And so, sometimes that was like the endless like pursuit of a life, making sure you have a job that has a pension so that you can retire when
Right.
you're old, so that so that you can then live whatever little life you have left in you, you know.
Mm.
And so I feel like people, need to start, really, really dissecting their lives and what they're doing. And not so much so that they can have, hey, go have, do a career change, but more like take care of yourself. Can you do a better job if you were in a better place, you know?
Hmm.
Emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever the case may be. And so
Yeah.
what, like coming from the healthcare provider standpoint, like what kind of, because I mean, anything can happen at a hospital. And then there's nurses, right? There's healthcare providers that work in an ER. Then there's also that work in specific flooring. Like, have you seen any kind of similarities in people's like burnout or, you know,
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is obviously the stress of it, because no matter what department in, if you're in healthcare, you're still taking care of people. You're still responsible for people's lives one way or another. Obviously, the severity of it can vary, but it's still stressful whether you're in the ER or whether you're in a doctor's office, you're dealing with people. So it's the responsibility of their lives and also just the interaction, right? Especially when we mentioned nurses and how like they just spend more time with the
Mhm.
patient than a provider, a doctor who might just be in for, giving updates and then they're out, where the nurses there all shift. And that is time with a person who's probably going through something really difficult in their lives. And so there's that additional layer to it where they're not going to be probably the best version of themselves. They might kind of react in ways that we really don't always appreciate. And so that's hard and that doesn't feel good. And, of course, we want patients to actually understand that that's a person in front of you as well. Please, have respect, and hopefully you have
Right.
administration who helps with that piece. But that is a reality of it, that, you're dealing with people who are not in good situations themselves. And so that people to people interaction isn't going to be the best every time. So that's another factor that's across the board. And then just the shifts sometimes, the different shifts that they work, like if it's nights, evenings. I nights always got to me. I couldn't really do nights full time like that. I did evenings, but that can interrupt right sleep, and you just physically don't feel great then. And so yeah, there's a lot of factors that are across the board, and that's why it's important to for each person to really dig in and see, what do I need? If this is my shift, what do I need? If this is my, office location, what is it that's affecting me, and how can I start to build myself back up?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I do hold nurses in high regards, but that doesn't mean I haven't had some negative interactions with some folks. And
Mhm.
like you said, yes, we're all people. And so, we never know what other people are going through. And, that does happen. I think what message would you have for people, let's say, who are not looking at their day-to-day life, who are not looking at, their needs as an individual because they're too busy thinking about their teenagers after they get off a shift. And speaking of shifts, like some of these shifts are long, 12 hours, you know yeah, and
For
then you
sure.
got to go home and do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah. And honestly, some people love the 12-hour shifts because then you work less days and you can kind of group them where you work a few and then have a longer stretch off. So it does work. And the other thing is, we mentioned with nursing, there's so many different options out there. So if you don't like the 12s, you can, go to like more of an office setting where it would be 8 hours. I actually did have a hospital that I worked out that they did 8 hours. And so um, it can vary, but
But these are also some of the things that they probably can look at. I've been working 12-hour shifts, but 12-hour shifts aren't like my body isn't welcoming those 12-hour shifts. Maybe I need
and
to
so that's
go to like
right.
less,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. For sure.
Yeah. So on a daily basis, like when you Are you doing full time now? Are you still nursing, or are you doing your business full time?
I'm not doing my business full time, so I do still have a full-time job plus my business. I did do a shift in my role. So I've done lots of different roles, and I started getting into leadership and quality and risk management, and now I'm actually in compliance. And that's the thing with nursing. There's so many different
Wow.
things you can
Yeah.
do. So um, I did make another shift a couple years ago where I was really trying to find a remote position because I have two little kids and I wanted to be able to be more present for them. And so I did leave my hospital job a couple years ago, and I work remote for a mental health company, actually, which I love doing.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And usually, like a lot of people that I know also that have businesses, they're finagling like both, a job
Mhm.
plus their business as it continues to grow, because things don't grow overnight, and so it takes a lot of your time as well. Um, what would you say to like a nurse that is coming in straight from college? Like, what would you tell your younger self? Like, knowing what you know now.
Yeah, I would say for a new nurse, it's a matter of having the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to know that you belong there. So unfortunately, and the reason why I say this, because unfortunately, the nurse eats the young is something that happens. There can be, at least as a new grad, that's how it was for me, right? There can be these more seasoned nurses who are like annoyed that they've got a younger nurse, but you belong there. We need you. Patients need you, look, facilities need you. You belong. You went and did your schooling. You did your NCLEX. Like you belong there. And so stand tall and do your best not to let that kind of attitude bother you. And still make sure that you're advocating for yourself while being there too, because you should not, enter situations where you're uncertain. If you need help, ask for that help. But when you have somebody who's, kind of acting annoyed with you, it can make you feel more timid and not want to ask for help. But don't put yourself in that kind of situation. Still ask for that help. Speak up, you know. Yeah, that would be like the biggest thing. And that's for your own sake. That is for the safety of others, all of that good stuff. So,
Yeah. No, you brought up a good point because I think everybody well, I shouldn't say everybody, but I think for the most part it is a natural thing that when you start a job, you're not feeling as confident because
yeah.
you're going to there's a learning curve. You're going to go in there with a learning curve. And so, yes, how others perform can affect you also. And then depending on your personality too,
Mhm.
how easily you absorbed, like, other people's bad vibes or, you know, so all of
And
that.
not everybody either, right? There's some super kind nurses, and hopefully that's,
Absolutely.
nurses around your life. But
Absolutely. Yes, yes. But, yes, like as a nurse, but even you're also interacting with other type of healthcare providers throughout, not just your
mm,
nurses. You're interacting with doctors, you're interacting with, radiographers. So depending on who needs to come pick up the patient, take them somewhere. So there's a
right.
multitude of people you're interacting with as well as, whoever your supervisor is administratively. So I think what you're doing is great. I think everybody should have a therapist, a life coach, something going on in their lives I always say, like, again, getting your friends and telling your friends is not a good method. You also don't want to put that on your friends. You don't want to, we always unload little things, but you don't want to unload everything because you want to be able to speak to someone who is a professional within the field of helping you figure out what you need to do to move forward, you know, providing those resources, providing, that care, that you have to tell people to do. And how do you, I guess, at hospitals, what is your goal now with your business? Do you envision yourself, doing speaking at events more so on hospital settings so that they continue to open up? like towards, healthcare providers and their healing and their, their process of healing.
Yeah. So there are a lot of conferences that happen for healthcare professionals, and it can be for, their specific discipline. There's like each type of healthcare provider. So they have nursing conferences, they have, you mentioned radiology, like radiology conferences, they have EMS conferences. There's so many different ones out there where they're pouring back into the healthcare professional. And I would love to see some of those sessions, some of those breakout sessions to include, let's pour back into our wellness, right? I
Yeah.
want to be at those conferences where
Yeah.
we're not, again, not only giving information about skills and the newest and latest research. That's all important. Don't get me wrong.
Correct.
I absolutely, we need to know the best practices so we can continue to provide care. But in addition, let's add this layer of how are you doing? We know that the burnout is real. The statistics are there. And so if we keep ignoring it, that's not going to help. And we're just going to continue to lose people and have this deficit of healthcare providers. So let's start facing it head on at these conferences where we're gathering hundreds of people every year. They're annual, they're yeah, super beneficial. I loved going to them. I would go to I was in rehab nursing. So I've been to a couple of rehab nurse conferences, compliance conferences, all the different things. They're awesome. But yes, we are only talking about the latest and greatest, specifically in that topic. I think a breakout session for including, pouring back in. And when I speak to my clients, it's about I build their foundation of calm because if we can remain calm during difficult situations, we're then able to make better decisions, right? And so we build that foundation of calm, we build up their confidence and start making sure that they again stand tall. You belong here. Ask the questions because there's nothing wrong with asking for help or asking for questions. Be confident in yourself and then that leads to a competency level where you're able to make those difficult decisions and feel good about them and not get stuck in this state of like, oh, what should I do? Or how should I move next? Right. So that building their foundation of calm, increasing their confidence, and then you lead to a higher competence level. That's kind of my framework.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think you feel like you hit the nail on the head. I went to a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of years ago. As a recruiter, I used to go to a couple of different healthcare provider conferences, and you're right. There's the latest is great and it's needed,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
just what you said too, like how do we, where's the wellness? What kind of wellness needs to be put in place for healthcare providers? I also saw like where students, there should be a student forum or a student
Yes.
portion so that they can start learning. I bring in student nurses so that they can also benefit from these things and know in advance that you are going to have to take care of your wellness. You know,
Mhm.
maybe it should be put in the curriculum of some sort or
Yeah, I think that I would love to speak to students as well. Yeah, for sure. Like new up and coming grads, to again just pour back into them because it is a lot. They're going through their own shift of graduating, stepping out into the real world. And yeah, the real world is not what you expect it to
it's no
be.
joke.
I know. I remember that shock.
It's no joke. I remember when I was a teenager, I can't wait to be 21. Now
Right.
I'm like, I wish I could go back. So many things I
Mhm.
would do differently. But yeah, I think that's a great, I think that's a great idea. You may want to start contacting some nursing departments at some of the local colleges and to speak about this because oftentimes having worked with nursing students, they were already stressed out as just being nursing
True.
students,
It's hard.
like clinicals, like
It's hard.
yeah. So imagine you're coming off a bachelor's degree and right into the workforce. So now you're just exchanging the level of stress.
Right.
But it's still going to be
Yep.
there. It's not going to like get better.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to identify, okay, what works for me? What do I need to continue to do to help manage this stress? It's not a matter of taking the stress away. Stress is going to happen. The stressors are going to keep occurring. It's a matter of how do I handle it? Do I know what keeps that foundation of calm for me? Because that looks different for everybody, right? Not everybody's foundation of calm is built the same by any means. And so it's really that self-evaluation, that self-awareness, and figuring out what you need to do on a regular basis so that when the stressors start to pile on, you can handle them, you can stand firm, and you've got them and know what tools to lean on.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, like, if you haven't like listened to but Are You Happy podcast, go do it, because if you need some relaxation, this is it. And some really good advice too, because you talk about that. You talk about not only, knowing what you need or trying to figure out what you need, but staying calm about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I sometimes don't stay calm about things that happen, and it just, it gets worse. It's almost like it's you feel the stress two times
Mhm.
the actuality of it. And so, yeah, staying calm is super important. I know you talked about, well, you didn't mention it, but, in my questionnaire, I asked about, some of the things, some of your messages, and you talk about how important joy and peace are.
Mhm.
And, that's something that in the last few years I've realized in my life how important, and particularly peace is, you know,
Yeah.
because that's different for everybody too. But sometimes, we get in our busy lives, we are so easily distracted too by noise.
Mhm.
And when I mean noise, I mean other chatter, other people. Maybe you're the oracle. Maybe everybody's coming to you, with everybody else's problems, but you're like, okay, I can give them advice, but I can't take my own advice. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it is important to reserve your energy for
Mm,
what is needed for yourself, for what's going to benefit you. And that's not being selfish. Making that decision to reserve your energy, to say no to somebody else's needs, that is not being selfish because I, people who are reevaluating that, I know you're giving, right? If you're even kind of trying to make that decision, you're trying to make this difficult decision to say no and reserve your energy for yourself. I already know you're a giving person and you're a great person and you're taking care of so many people. So you are not being selfish by saying no and reserving your energy for what's beneficial for you. All you're doing is building yourself up because the next move that you're going to make is pouring back into somebody else. But you can't do that, right? Without taking care of you, without making sure you're putting up the necessary boundaries by pouring back into yourself, by getting the rest, by hydrating, by moving your body, like all those little things that are important to you. Those are hard to do though, right? We mentioned, you said about staying calm. You can't always do it. No, because it's hard. It is hard to stay calm because it requires a lot of work within. And if you're giving everybody else your energy towards negativity, towards gossip, towards judgment, towards, the just negative things that are occurring, you're spending time on that. We have no more energy left to build that foundation of calm. So, but I always say, like, that's not being selfish though. By saying no, I'm not going to engage in that judgmental conversation. I'm going to reserve my energy for me. That's not being selfish. That's taking care of you. And that's a must because no one else is going to do it. No one else is
right.
taking care of you. Like you can take care of yourself.
Right, right. Yeah, that's something I learned as well. And, not only that is, because I think one of the hardest things is like knowing that somebody could be like, oh, you're selfish, what they think about you, right?
Mhm.
But at this point, you also have to kind of like let them think whatever they want, right?
You're not
Because
paying the
that
bills.
also comes with that confidence building, right? The moment you're able to find that confidence, you know that saying no is okay.
Yeah. Because they're not going to take care of everything, right? Like the things that you're saying no to pour back into something else that's needed for you. They're not giving you that.
Right,
And other people say no very easily. So why do we feel like we have to say yes all the time? We don't have to.
right, right. Yeah. What would you say to somebody like who, like maybe before answering yes,
Mhm.
how can they reflect before, giving that first automatic answer, right? Because we're so used to saying yes. Like, what would you say to that person? Like, how can we back off? How can we, like, what do we need? Take a minute and think before you speak.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of thinking about it. If, like, whatever it is that you're about to say yes to, when you think about it, does that bring you joy? Does that sound exciting? Or are you
Mm,
dreading it? There's like a physical feeling towards those things, right? Something that sounds exciting and you're like, ooh, it's almost like this giddy feeling versus something that you're dreading and you're like, oh, and it's this heavy feeling. What are you feeling when you think about it, about doing that thing? Because if it's this like heavy dread, then you need to think real long and hard before you say yes. There has to be a really good reason because sometimes we do have to say yes to things that maybe we dread, but we know maybe there's a positive outcome in the end, right? I'm not saying don't get uncomfortable. Go ahead
right.
and push yourself, get uncomfortable to accomplish things that you truly want. But if there's nothing else tied to it, and it's truly just not something you want to do, you get to say no. And it's a no thanks.
Yeah,
And you don't even have to give a reason. You don't have to tell
exactly.
people why you can't do it. Like they're not paying your bills.
Right.
You pay your own bills. So you get to make that decision, and that's for you to decide. And you don't have to even share why that is.
Right. Like you mentioned, you're the captain, right, of your ship. You're the
Yes.
captain of your life. You get to build your life. And that's something I think we forget sometimes. We forget, just like we forget boundaries and little things that serve us in good ways. And it's so important to revisit those kind of things, because, we're human. And, sometimes, we want to please people, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a sibling, whether it's your best friend. And I think you just like really, you said something. I always try to learn something from everybody I get to connect with and chat. And you just said something like, if somebody asks something of you and you're like, oh, it's not what I wanted to
Yeah.
do today, like right there is your answer. Like right there, like, and I like, and I'll own it. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll help you out when that's not the what I wanted to do, because I had the day planned to help me out, to
Yeah.
rest or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty like simple, thing to do. Like just say to yourself whether, I see that like being very helpful.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you see your business like? How do you envision it moving forward? I feel like you got it working. You know who it's there for. You know who you want to help. You know who it's there to service. You've gone to conferences, but where do you want to take this up to? What level, do you envision yourself?
I think so. I've mentioned I've been able to attend conferences as, the healthcare professionals, and I really enjoy it. So being able to attend conferences nationally, maybe even internationally, as a workshop facilitator, as a speaker, that would be like awesome. But in the same thing, I would still always want to do my one-on-one coaching. I
Hmm.
love coaching one-on-one and being able to work over a long period of time with somebody to see them grow, to see them make shifts, to see them make difficult decisions, to see them start to like really find that confidence in themselves and be so excited to do certain things that they've been wanting to do and maybe they couldn't, make the jump, and we get to work together and they do it. Like I love that. That fills me up like no other. So I do want to, go out there and build, but I would never want to let go of the one-on-one coaching as well. It would kind of be a simultaneous thing.
Yeah, I see that like one and one, yeah, yeah, close
Yeah.
together. Yeah, part of it, a little branch, yeah, of it. So, yeah, and I think you're wonderful at it. I watched you when you first launched your coaching, and this was a few years ago. So I remember, seeing some of your content, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, so she pivoted a little bit, and how wonderful this is. But I didn't know exactly to what extent,
Right.
until like I started like looking into like sisters who have podcasts, or sisters, sorority sisters who are like just being at their greatness,
Yeah.
so So I can see, your growth, and I'm sure you can see your growth as well. And so I
Yeah,
think,
I'm trying.
yeah,
You mentioned that businesses are a journey. It's
uh,
absolutely a journey. It's a marathon, right? It's not like a quick little sprint, that's for sure.
right.
But I love it so much. So I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I just like, I mentioned about the feeling. Does it get you excited or is it dread? Like I get excited. I just feel so full when I get to go speak, when I get to do a one-on-one coaching session. So I know it's meant to be. It's this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my purpose, and I'm gonna keep at it. But yeah, it's not an easy thing running a business, that's for sure, but worth it.
Yes, yes. But then you're living on purpose though, because this is what you want to do, as well as, you I feel like you've encompassed. You knew where you wanted to go and what you needed to do to get there. And so and
Mhm.
even pivoting with your job and doing something that's more, from home, just to be able to have more time with your kids. So I think these are some of those decisions that sometimes you know, we may think are impossible, like
Yeah,
to make,
finding
or
that remote job felt impossible. Took a lot of interviewing, and it took a long time. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, when you make your mind up on something, you gotta stick with it and keep going, and then continue to look in within. What do I need? Because this journey's difficult.
right.
But don't give up on those things that you really want.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and how to grow by taking care of yourself. That's a part of a growth that sometimes people don't, they don't look at it as growing, but it is,
Yeah,
and
and you got to celebrate that, right? When you notice, if you're on this long path, you're on a long journey, like I am with my business, it's so important to celebrate all along the way and remembering, like, wait a minute, I used to be there and now I'm here. I have had growth. That is something to celebrate. That is something to take a moment to have that joy, to be excited about. That is actually the whole point.
hmm
It's not the end game. It's not the final destination. It's the journey along the way. So learning to be able to take that in, to enjoy those moments, just that is the joy, right? That's where you find that true happiness.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, I get it. And so yeah, that's the place where you want to be at, right? Because how to balance, right? And part of that journey is how you balance everything, right? So that you
Mhm.
can have joy at work, so that you can have joy at home, and then also joy on the weekends and whatever it is that you do or whatever you
Yeah.
decide to do. So thank you for your words of wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love this. I love to be able to connect and hope that, somebody can watch it or somebody can listen to it and say, you know what, this is my time. I need to reach out to Christine. I need to get this going. I need to take care of me so that I can take care of everybody else, right? And so I think it's a wonderful thing that you offer these services for our healthcare providers, because somebody needs to take care of them.
Heck yeah. They're taking care of us. We need them.
Yes, yes, and I don't know. Last time I had checked, there was a shortage of nurses. I don't know if there's still. I feel like there always is. Yeah,
Yeah, they're really always, I mean, the whole time I've been a nurse, that's what I've been told, and that's what I've been hearing, and that's what I'm still seeing. So we were just always, yeah, always short. It's a hard job. It
yeah,
is a very hard job. I
yeah.
mean, so, yeah, it needs more support, right? We need to support our healthcare professionals. It's a very demanding industry. So
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for the service that you provide for healthcare providers, healthcare individuals. So, and when we say healthcare, it could be any aspect of healthcare, right?
yeah, really, I mean, because I honestly have worked mostly with nurses, but I know working closely with other disciplines that it doesn't stop there. The
Right.
burnout is not just in nursing. It definitely is, no matter where you are in
Yeah.
that in the healthcare industry, you're dealing with a lot of the similarities, all those things that we covered, right? The people connection and having the responsibility, the shifts, all of that crosses over to different departments as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm definitely gonna put up once I do a little summary. I'm gonna add your website and your contact information.
Okay.
And yeah, thanks for what you do.
Thanks for having me here. This is fun.
So until next time, what we can do is stay a little bit so we can chat real quick. But guys, until next time, keep dreaming, keep experiencing, and keep taking care of yourself.